my research is in an area called ambidexterity, organizational ambidexterity. And what that is that in many organizations they face this challenge of how to kind of control and develop employee or individual competencies while also allowing for new innovation. In terms of the teaching, I kind of try to look at, well, how do we address that problem in trying to build and also manage for effective organization. One of the major challenges, especially that we see with ambidexterity in the workplace, is that it really requires a person who's like kind of like a Renaissance person. You know, somebody who is creative, flexible, and resourceful and entrepreneurial. At the same time, do they know how to control? Do they know how to standardize? Do they know how to manage? Do they know how to deal with resources? So in the workplace, that's becoming more and more of a challenge because most people are either you kind of situate on one hand, so to speak, or the other hand, but not really on both. So those are kind of the essential qualities of good leadership. Well, I think that good leadership is being a very good visionary, not only for your organization, but also looking now at the broader impact of that organization and what it does for society. And so, as part of being a visionary, you have to kind of look beyond dichotomy. And so, I think being a good leader recognizes the fact that it's not just all about flexibility or creativity. It's not just all about standardization and control, but it's really how we bring those functions together. I think a major challenge that we see specifically in business education, management education more generally, is that there's this disconnect between theory and practice. You know, that oftentimes to build those skills, you really need real-world application. You really need to get people out there and actually doing it. And the reason that that's a challenge is because oftentimes what we do in many classrooms is more textbook-based learning or case study simulations, and that you know, even though the textbook may be great or case study simulations may be good, they can't really replace the real-world experience. Just being out there and doing it. There's been studies done on students that have done real-world learning versus those that do text-based learning, and they found that students that get out there and actually do it are 2 to 3 times more successful in their long-term careers. One of the major trends that we see happening with many organizations right now is really this push toward corporate social responsibility and sustainability issues and practices. And that's really coming largely because what we're seeing is that we're seeing this push from like a really industrial model toward more of a human-centric model. You know, consumers, employees want to see how their organizations are benefiting society, not exploiting resources, right? They want to see how they're growing the pie, so to speak, not kind of taking the pie. You know, how are they benefiting individuals, communities, other organizations, and we can see that just in the general trend. I think that really challenges the old industrial model where we have to exploit, you know, we have to kind of abuse, we have to pollute our environment toward, well, how do we build more of a collaborative environment in which everybody benefits? How does it create a win-win? And so part of really understanding what that looks like in terms of as a future leader of an organization is really getting out there and dealing firsthand with the socioeconomic issues. Getting out there, working for a community-based organization, whether it be a for-profit or nonprofit, really addresses, kind of confronts you with the everyday challenges, you know, resource constraints, how to think creatively and provide a new opportunity. How do you integrate that with kind of, you know, management approaches that have been done in for-profit organizations, how you do it with nonprofit organizations, and then also vice versa. And so that really gets you out there and broadens your frame. And it also becomes a marketable tool for a student, because students can go out there and say, hey, listen, I've done, you know, X, Y, and Z, as opposed to not just getting an A in a class, I'm actually able to show what I've done for the community. I think a lot needs to change. So I think that we're already seeing the change here. I mean, the change has already started in the sense that you have millennials. A lot of students can't find a good job, or the type of job that they wanted, and they're a lot in debt. You know, sometimes hundreds of thousands in debt. I think the average debt is something like, you know, $33,000, but if you look more broadly, it's like $1.2 trillion. Okay, in terms of national debt related to student loan debt. You also, at the same time, have companies like Google that are now saying that you don't even need to have a college degree to get hired. And then you have folks like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates who say, well, look at me. I didn't even have to get a Harvard degree, and I'm making $1 billion. And so this is like all converging into a perfect storm where increasingly the credibility of these programs are being questioned. So I think that it's really coming to a head right now where people really have to show results. And so that's where I see the future headed. You know, how are you showing that you're bridging this gap? How are you showing that whatever you teach in the classroom is relevant, that will get me a good job, that will help me develop my career and build new organizations? Some projects, you know, for example, might be building a website that helps people connect to their communities. Another project would be looking at, you know, maybe folks who are older demographics. Usually what happens is as people age, people kind of view them as useless, right? So they say, well, they're more of a cost than a benefit. So looking at how to reintegrate them back into the workforce is another project. Maybe working for public schools, seeing how we can transition this model even earlier into education. Other opportunities, you know, in terms of aside from that kind of education-related focus, looking at doing a turnaround strategy for a failing organization. So I've done that in the past where I've had students actually work for a for-profit that was failing and looking at creating a turnaround strategy. In nonprofits, I've had them do board development. How would they recruit? How would they create the vision, the branding strategy for a nonprofit? So there's a variety of different projects that can tap into these skills and make them very real world.